Welcome to my 6D Enterprise Integration Development Method. So this is a method that will help you whenever you want to do any kind of integration with either an SAP system or any other things in your enterprise. This is about what are the things that you want to deal with for all of these different processes and why they're important. So I've created 6 different boxes that make sense for this. So the first one is we want to decide what kind of integration that we're going to develop for this. Then we want to look at the device or the tools that is relevant for this. How can they be used? Then we look at the designing of this. How can we get this to work? We would look at our development process. What are the different development cycles that we can go through? We got a documentation phase that's really important because this is going to be maintained by someone else, most likely in the future. And then you got something about what do we need to do to get this to go live. So these are the different main topics that we want to cover in this, and let's just get started and show you what are the different steps you need to do whenever you are taking in a new integration task. So in our design phase, the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out what are the scope for this. So this is figuring out what are the vision for the integration. Why is it that we want to do this integration? Then we want to find the goal for this. What is it that we want to achieve with this? And a lot of times I found it helpful to just ask the business, so what are the full business process? Please describe this to me. Because that will give you a bit of clarity if you don't have all the different requirements for it, that what's going on before and after this specific step. And a lot of time you would see that if you're sending an order, you may get an invoice back at some point in time, and that's still kind of the same process. And you need to figure out how do we deal with these different things. So in that perspective, it's a really good idea to get to understand what are the real scope of this. And is there anything else that we're missing in this perspective? Then you want to do some questioning of the stakeholders involved in this. You want to, so obviously the business in most cases will come with a task to you and say, hey, please create this integration for you. And you must figure out, so what do they know about this specific topic? What do they know about integration? Are they able to really relay what they want, or is this just a bit vague of what they're dealing with? And you may have multiple different stakeholders in this. So you may have one that's responsible for the SAP system. You may have one that's responsible for your warehouse system, and you need to question both of them and figure out what do they know about the process and be helpful and figure out, because they know something differently and may have different views of the world, and that's really important to get to understand for you to create a good integration. Then we want to look at what are the different involved systems. So if it's a warehouse integration, we want to figure out what are our SAP system, what are the warehouse system. We want to figure out some things about this. So what are the adapters that they are supporting? What are the age of it? Is it something that's going to be replaced in a few months? Or is this something that's going to be there forever as we know it? And then we want to know what are the accessibility of this? How can we get access to it? Is this just something that these people know and get into a fancy GUI to do? Or is it something that we as developers can actually go and see what's going on and see if everything is correct? And we want to do that for all the different systems just to make sure we got the relevant information for this. Obviously, whenever you start a project, there's a lot of uncertainties, things that you think you knew but really isn't there yet. and I believe it's kind of a requirement to get into figure out what are all of these different steps. We need to figure out, is there something that we need other people to help us with? In this case, do we need to get a consultant or outside view or a friend that has done something similar to help us on this? Because we want to figure out, is the project even feasible before we get any further into it. Another important thing here is the volume or sizing of this integration. It's it's a little about what kind of messages do we want to get in this. What are the message sizes, and what are there any spikes that we want to be curious about? So it's not about figuring out if it's 5,000 or 5,500, but it's more about figuring out, is this something that will have a high impact on our system, or just something that's going to be there but not really impacting any of what we're doing. Mostly because if it's something that's high volume and you want to do more tailoring regarding the development than if it's just, oh well, we'll get a message a day that's not anything big. So that's something you want to take into the consideration. Obviously, the business would have some kind of a business case before they go into this, but I find it's a really good idea to just have an idea about this. So what do they expect this integration to benefit? How much will it reduce the cost of your business? How much new business will it create? And what do they expect, and what would you expect the development cost to be? Because in that case, well, it makes it easier to figure out, okay, we got this amount of money to spend on this. Whereas if it is, well, it may be a legal requirement, so there's no real business case except there's a huge fine, then that would also be relevant for that. If we look at device, so device would probably more be tool. Or what are the systems that you want to integrate with this. So here is the main thing you want to figure out here is what is the integration pattern that is being presented here. So what type of integration is this? Is this an API call? Is this a message transaction, or whatever is going on to it? And then you want to be able to find what are the if this is something that you have done before, then I guess it makes it a lot easier. Whereas if this is something new, you'd have to figure out, so how does this really work? Where does this exist? So you just want to figure out, have we done this before? Because then it makes the rest of this a lot easier. And then if it works, then it's fine. If it does not, you probably need to reconsider this development or this tool that you have done and this pattern that you want to use. And you may want to get external or internal help for some of these other topics that you have. So in the SAP world, there's come a lot of new tools in, and this is just the SAP relevant products, but there's also non-SAP relevant topics that does the same thing. So is it PIPO? Is it cloud integration you want to use? Is there any of the other tools from SAP or methods that would make this really useful? So SAP has the ISA-M method, which is a methodology that will help you find. So you come with all your integration patterns that you have, and then you map each of these integration patterns to a method that should be used in this case. And then you would just go in, say for each of these scenarios, create it, and with or say, okay, we got these integration patterns, and then you would say, okay, we would need these different tools for it. And then you know, okay, if I got one of these integration patterns, then I need to use this tool. Obviously, there can be multiple different tools for each integration patterns depending on volume, load, skills, and stuff like that. But at least it will give you a starting point about what should we consider in these cases and what are the tools that we want to use. Next up is do we want to acquire a new product or new tool for this? And obviously then it's a good idea that you have the business case and you know, well, this could benefit the company in the following way. So in that perspective, it would be a good idea to get something new if it would help and make the product or the integration better, and if you got the money for it. But obviously this can be something that would take a couple of months depending on who you are and what are the internal processes that you have for doing integrations. If we take a look at the designing part, so obviously the more you got from the earlier stages, the better. And some of these steps would be rather easy. And in here, obviously, we're coming in with a lot of SAP PIPO related topics. But they are something similar in other applications. So first up, we want to look at what are the specifications we have for this. So what are the input formats? What are the output formats? We got the best way. If you got any of the output format is an sample document, is just figuring out, okay, if we fill this in and deliver it, will it actually do whatever we want? So in an RFC, you would use the RFC test tool, just upload the document and see, did it create the sales order you wanted or not? And then based on that, you would be able to see, okay, did the interface or output format work in the way we wanted it to? Then obviously you would have some kind of an idea between the input and the output format. How do we need to convert these different things and getting them involved? What are the fields? What are the business logic behind some of these fields? How they're filled in? And this obviously involve the business, but do know they don't always know all the things that are going on and why we're dealing with some things. This may be a good idea to address some of the other concerns that you have about this. So do we need to get a token to upload this document or something like that? Are there any business logic? So depending on if it is this order type, we need to do something specific when we're creating the output document. Is there any way we can make any reduction in this? So the leaner you make the interface, the easier they are to maintain. And then what are the security requirements that we have? So a big thing in the EU right now is this GDPR policy about user data and what are the access that you as a user have. And if you're not following it, it can be rather expensive. So is that something you need to put into this specification also? You want to take a look at what are the different attack vectors or options of attacking this. So obviously if this is an internal one, it may not be as required, But if this is something that you're going to expose on the internet, it's really crucial you have considered, okay, so what's the worst thing that someone can do when they're accessing this thing? And what kind of policies do we have in our organization to deal with these kind of scenarios? Where do we need to have encryption? What is encryption and stuff like that? Next up, we want to choose the adapter, and we want to use standard protocols wherever possible if it is easier. If you in PI you can use the file adapter for some scenarios, and the file adapter is really easy to use, got a lot of benefits. But sometimes it may not be really containing the full security, because people can change files and add new files, whereas a proxy is a little easier to maintain. And also there's some challenges about if we deliver the file, do we have any guarantee that it will be processed or not read before we're done processing it and stuff like that. Do we have a proxy? For new development in PI, you would create proxies as the best way to do that. Then you got RFCs, Barbies, and IDOC. It's obviously good if we have those, we'll just be reusing them. And obviously enterprise services is also really useful for these things. If there's something else we want to deal with in this, then maybe we want to create an adapter module. And in the adapter module, it's really powerful. You got a lot of options of things you can do in those things. So obviously you want to take that into consideration. And then the last step in this is, if none of the other things would work, you'd have to develop a custom adapter. And that is really a task that does take a lot of time. I've done two adapters, and they took quite a lot of time to develop and make sure them worked on the clustering system and stuff like that. So that is something you want to take real care about, getting those things delivered. And obviously it also takes time to develop and support in the future. Do we want to use processes in this? So do we need a BPMN model in process orchestration to handle this delivering of messages and formatting? Or are there any of the other patterns that we already have we can use for this? So obviously, if it is something that contains multiple different calls to a service, it may be better to have cloud integration because it has a better framework for handling those kind of things. Then, this would be the technical processes. And obviously, I do prefer not having in PI and PO, the processing capability is good. It works. But it obviously adds some complexity, and if you can avoid it, it would be a lot easier and make the integration faster. Naming, you want to find some good namings for software components, namespaces, object use, and some of the generic details about this. So one of the best thing I know is to get the business to describe what are the business objects, because then naming becomes a lot easier, because we got an order or sales order or process order, whatever type of business object that they're dealing with, and sometimes they may not really know it, but give the business some time for it. And obviously software and namespaces is something that has to fill into to your organization's way of handling these things. So now you have designed a solution and have an idea about how to deal with this. Then you may want to find or figure out how can we simplify the solution. If this would solve it, can we do anything easier and make it smarter for the user to do these things? And how can we deal with it? So you may have to design the same thing one more time, just on paper, and see if you can create something that you think, this would probably be a better solution for it. So this would obviously be in those cases where you have to design a new pattern on something that's not really working, that this is really beneficial. Once you got the solution, you may want to get a third-party developer or another developer to say, okay, cool, I got this. This is good. How can we deal with these things? Or is there anything I've been thinking wrongly of and I could do better? A lot of time when we're sitting in a cubicle and just trying to figure out what to do, it may be better to ask someone else, hey, I got this question. Do you have an idea to do this? And then if time permits it, you may want to create a proof of concept just to see, did this thinking work? Can you create it before really getting started on everything else? So now we are ready to start the real development. The thing I do prefer to do then is just to start and test if the connection works first. Test that we can do these things and make sure they work. So we want to notice where some of the mapping, what are the fields in our structure that could be different than we originally expected them to be. Then we want to look at the mapping. What are do we need any variables? Do we have any complex rules for this? And then in this specific mapping, how do we deal with it? And then we want to set up some of the unit tests. Just figure out, okay, we have an input document sample. Want to test that it works. And that's also one of the reason why you want to set up connection first, because if it's an IDOC, it's a good idea to get a real IDOC that you can use and is XML whenever you're doing your mapping. Then testing, I put a lot of items into the testing, and I believe that this is quite crucial. So you want to test alone the scenario that it works. You want to test with the business, and this is really and obviously an end-to-end test. This is really crucial when you're dealing with some systems that you don't know and don't really have a good specification on. Then you need someone to say, okay, no, this field is wrong. You should probably put this into it, then it would work. And yeah, obviously for homemade system, that's really normal to do. So a little of an end-to-end test. A lot of times when I've seen people test, I have seen them, they're just creating a purchase order with one line item on, because it takes a long time to create multiple line items, and that's just plain old wrong, because you're not testing the full integration in a meaningful way. So in the testing, you want to promote as many errors as possible. So when you have done this as a developer, you want to say, okay, please business, can you test this scenario? I'm a bit uncertain about what it would look like. I do prefer that you are creating the best way to do a test on, for instance, a purchase order is to test If we're sending a purchase order with line item 1, that's good. Line item 2 we don't want, and line item 3 that we want, then it's most likely to find the errors that you have in that mapping. And then you want to automate the testing. Oh, that was a little too fast. And FIGAF has a good tool that's called ERT that helps make testing in SAP PI PO a lot faster and set them up, and you can run them continuously to make sure that the system works as you want it to. Then you want to do documentation, and it should be understandable by other people. You should focus on the thing that's most important to have. So maybe you don't want to make some comments about all these different, all the full things, but the things that you thought, well, that's a strange decision that I made, but I did make it. You want to have some kind of a baseline document that says, hey, here, this is what we want to document, this is what's good. Then you want to review the documentation, get someone else to see, okay, do you understand this? Are there anything I'm missing, and could you support the solution if you want to do this? And then you want to learn either internally or externally. So it's a good idea to create blogs where you're just trying to scrape, hey, I got this scenario, I created this mapping, I did it in this way, and share it. And that way other people would get benefit of what you have done. And you may get some feedback and said, hey, that's is a solution for making this, but maybe you could have done it a little different way and done it this and this way. So this will give you a little more reflection about what you have done and really make sure that you have done it correctly. Then we are in the do. So now we're ready to go live. We will do our transports, making sure that it work and run smoothly on our testing system. So some of my clients have been using the FIGAF ERT testing tool to test that they have all the things in the transport and everything like that using the FIGAF ERT tool, because then they can send it to the service partner saying, hey, configure it like this, run this test case. If it works, we're good. Otherwise, there's something that we're missing or something you need to do in this case. Then we want to do a go live of this. And obviously, a lot of time there's a lot of support that you need to deal with. And you want to fix these things as fast as possible, so the business does not suffer in this period of time. And then you may hand it over to the operations and supporting organizations if you have that. So a lot of places, they have a service partner doing all the normal maintenance and support, and this would be what they would hand over to them, say, hey, here is what you need to do, please support this. And then it obviously make a lot of sense if you have some good documentation in this. So I've described this really a linear way, but obviously there's a lot of rework, a lot of things that you may want to go from design to device to designing, go back to device, go to development, go back. So there's a lot of going back and iteration in this, and obviously you don't really know what you're dealing with. You may, when you are testing these things, you may want to see, okay, what we thought here didn't really work. We have to do it in a different way, in a different scenario. And then you want to go back to some of these other assumptions that you made along the way. And with that, being able to process these things and make sure that they will run as smooth as possible. I do hope that you have enjoyed this and you got some benefit from it. You can download this or view this mind map, so you can go through all the different steps in it. And that's probably a good idea to learn a little more about, or remembering what I need to do in the different steps that you have. So I hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you.